What's going on, my fellow Kino Lords? So today I'm bringing you guys something a little different, a little change of pace. This is a video that I've actually never done before, and it's been a long time coming. And I gotta give a huge shout out to Mitchie, one of the OGs in the Discord. He recommended that I do this list and gave me the idea for it. And for the rest of the year, and potentially for the remainder of the existence of my channel, I plan to do a lot more of these top 10 or top 20 type videos. The next few that I'm probably going to be doing after this are my top 10 favorite Palme d'Or winners. Shout out to Charlotte in the Discord for requesting that. But the other one that I really want to do is an updated version of my top 20 favorite films of all time. Because the last time I did a top 20 video, that was basically when I first started my channel. And since then, I've just discovered so many different filmmakers and so many different films. And it's just really mind-blowing how much film knowledge I feel like I've gained since that time. But anyways, you clicked on this video to hear my top 10 favorite filmmakers of all time. I'm not gonna lie, making this list, well, I mean, I knew it was gonna be tough, but I actually got irrationally angry making this list. Just having to leave out some filmmakers that I absolutely love, and not only do I consider to be influential to cinema, but filmmakers that I also just have a deep personal connection with, and filmmakers that inspired me to be a filmmaker. It was just so excruciatingly painful to not include them in my top 10, but there's only so many slots I could really give. And I mean, don't worry, I'm going to mention I have so many filmmakers of honorable mentions. I'm going to just kind of run through them before I go into my top 10. But just bear in mind that in my top 10, there's a handful of filmmakers in there that are certainly just deeply personal picks. I mean, I obviously think that there is something, objectively resonant with their style of filmmaking. But like, in a sense, these are filmmakers that I included in the top 10. Mostly because they were there early in my film discovery stage and have just had such an influential impact on the way that I view filmmaking and the art of cinema as a whole. But anyways, let's go ahead and get through these honorable mentions. I'm sure that naming off some of these filmmakers is just going to make you want to cut my head off. But I'm telling you, it was very, very difficult to leave some of these filmmakers off the list. Alright, we got Terry Gilliam, Sidney Lumet, Christian Mungiu, Thomas Vinterberg, Billy Wilder, Wong Kar-wai. That one was definitely painful. John Waters, Guillermo del Toro, that one also very painful. Akira Kurosawa. So when it comes to filmmakers like Akira Kurosawa, and I feel like this was the case with a lot of, older and influential and, iconic filmmakers, I only left them out of the list mostly because I feel like I haven't dived into their filmography enough. Because I've only seen about 4 Akira Kurosawa films, maybe 5 if I'm mistaken. But he has so many films in his filmography that I feel like I really need to dive into before like really making that justified decision to be in my top 10. And even then, there's some filmmakers that I feel like are never going to break my top 10 no matter how brilliant another filmmaker is. But anyway, moving forward, David Lynch, Masaki Kobayashi, another filmmaker that I've only seen 2 of his films, Harakiri and The Human Condition, and they're both 10 out of 10s. Only the first part of The Human Condition, by the way. But again, I haven't dived enough into his stuff yet. Sergio Leone, painful. Quentin Tarantino, Satyajit Ray. I've only seen one Satyajit Ray film, but I feel pretty certain that eventually, once I watch more of his stuff, he will make it into my top 10 filmmakers of all time. Because just from me watching The Hero, completely blew me away. I mean, super impressive stuff. Wes Anderson, Ingmar Bergman. Again, another filmmaker I haven't dived into enough yet. The Coen brothers. That one was definitely painful because I've seen almost every Coen brothers film and I pretty much love them all to death. And it just couldn't make the cut in my top 10. Kenito Shindo, another Japanese filmmaker that I absolutely love. The Naked Island, Onibaba, Kuroneko. Just couldn't make the list, unfortunately. And here are the final 3 honorable mentions that were super painful. Abbas Kiarostami. He was in my top 10 for a little bit, but just after further evaluating all of my options, he unfortunately just kind of got weaseled out, and it just sucks. But again, one of those things, I haven't dived enough into his filmography yet, but from the 4 films that I've seen from him, incredible. I just love how subtle and powerful of a filmmaker he is. Incredible writer as well. Brilliant Iranian filmmaker and filmmaker in general. The next one, Bong Joon-ho. That one was severely painful as well. Memories of Murder, Parasite, Mother, all essentially masterpieces, and just couldn't make the list. And another one that for me personally, I mean, for a lot of people probably, whatever, they could take it or leave it. But Darren Aronofsky, for me, it was personally torture to leave him off the list because he is, in my opinion, one of the best contemporary filmmakers that we still have working today. I mean, to me, he's just a bold, honest visionary of a filmmaker, and it just really sucked to leave him off the list. But that's it, guys. Those are all the honorable mentions. I think by now you could probably tell why it was so fucking awful to finalize a top 10 for my favorite filmmakers. It was just fucking agonizing. But alright, with those honorable mentions out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into my top 10 favorite filmmakers of all time with number 10, which is... I just had to include Nicholas Winding Refn into this list. I had to, because I know that he's not going to be in a lot of people's top 10s, and I completely understand that, because he is a fairly divisive filmmaker. But he is just one of those filmmakers, especially in my early film discovery days, just really opened the door to me perceiving film in this type of aesthetic, artful way that I didn't quite perceive until watching his films. He just brings such a unique pace and aesthetic style to his films that I don't really see anybody else doing. Everything that I've seen from him, I absolutely love. Drive is a film that most people can agree is fucking amazing on pretty much every level. Only God Forgives is like the really divisive ones. People think it's pretentious garbage. And you got people like me that absolutely love it, because he is just such a master at his craft, his stylistic, aesthetic craft, that even if in terms of substance and character, it's perhaps not as strong as a film like Drive, his style alone makes it to where you can just be totally engrossed into the material, regardless if you're not the biggest fan of the characters and story, because the style itself, in a lot of ways, is the substance. And to me, that is the case with Only God Forgives. But anyway, yeah, I absolutely love The Neon Demon. To me, The Neon Demon is my personal favorite Nicholas Winding Refn film. I know it's not, I wouldn't go as far to say it's like objectively his best, but just personal favorite, that is my favorite. It's just, I remember being obsessed with that movie when I first watched it in theaters. I literally could not get my mind off it. It just really stuck with me in a way that I haven't had in a long time. But his miniseries works, which is something that I feel like people don't really talk about often. But his series Too Old to Die Young and recently Copenhagen Cowboy are, for me personally, just amazing pieces of filmmaking. There's just so much intention and so much delicacy within every frame of the series. And he's just somebody that, doesn't phone anything in. He's somebody that, with every single scene and every second of his material, he has a vision set and he has something like special that he wants to execute within his art form. And it's something that I just highly appreciate out of him as an artist and a filmmaker. And hopefully sooner rather than never, I'll be able to talk about Copenhagen Cowboy more extensively, because I really, really loved it. I was disappointed because I wanted more, and I don't think we're going to ever get any more. But that's the most bizarre and surreal that I've ever seen Refn go with his work, and I highly recommend it. It's on Netflix, so if you're a Refn fan, or even if not, just give it a shot, please. But yeah, I fucking love Nicholas Winding Refn. I am obsessed with the style. I cannot get enough of it, and that is why he is number 10 on my favorite filmmakers list. Adios, adios para siempre, adios. So at number 9, we have Alejandro Hodorowski. Yeah, this guy is just like, what? It's almost impossible to describe this guy in words. Not only him as a person, but just, again, his approach to the art form. He's probably one of the most batshit insane artists in terms of filmmaking that I've ever witnessed. This is one guy that truly does not give a shit if people like his work. He's somebody that just completely puts the foot on the gas and just puts it into 200 miles per hour and just does whatever the fuck he wants to do throughout his entire film. And it's not gonna work for everybody, obviously, because by nature it's just not. But there's just so much creativity going on within his work. I mean, obviously with films like The Holy Mountain, just for me, it's hard to wrap my head around the fact that he was able to bring something like that to life, in terms of the production design and the color and the costuming and just pretty much every aspect of filmmaking. Is just kind of bizarre to think about what it took to bring something like that huge, ambitious, and audacious idea to life. I mean, I heard that the script for the film was only like 12 pages long or something like that. And just to make something that grandiose and that daring, out of such little script material is just, I mean, it's beyond commendable. But even though I love The Holy Mountain to death, Santa Sangre is actually my favorite Hodorowski film. I actually have a whole review on Santa Sangre, so if you want to check that out, hear my more extensive thoughts on it, please do. But Santa Sangre is the Hodorowski film that perfectly blends like a more traditional story that has character arcs while also incorporating that absolute bonkers vision of his to the table. And again, Santa Sangre is not gonna be a film for everybody. Him as a filmmaker is not gonna be for everybody. But that film to me is just a perfect blend of like traditional narrative storytelling and just like completely bizarre and daring and surrealist filmmaking that I am just deeply in love with. But yeah, Alejandro Hodorowski is an absolute madman, and that's why he's number 9 on my list. So at number 8, we have Alfonso Cuaron. So this was really hard because I basically made myself choose between Alfonso Cuaron and Alejandro González Iñárritu. And after some meditative thinking, I kind of gave a slight edge to Alfonso Cuaron. There's just something about films like Y tu mamá también and Children of Men that reach me on such an intimate human emotional level that I just respect and appreciate it so much. I mean, Y tu mamá también is such a brilliant film in so many ways. I've talked about that film quite a bit on this channel. But yeah, just such an authentic and raw piece of filmmaking that I feel like really does capture the complex sensuality and sexuality and relationships between human beings, better than a lot of films that I can even remember. And then you have Children of Men that, in a way, is kind of a dystopian action movie, but in another way is a very subtle and slowly paced human drama that, again, just really resonated with me and I appreciate so much. And even Roma. I mean, I've only seen Roma twice in my life, and those 2 times were in the year that it came out. But that film to me is strikingly human and beautiful. Just talking about it now makes me want to revisit it because it's been so long. But that film to me is such an effective piece of filmmaking as well. And I'm also a fan of Gravity. There, I said it. I know, like, apparently now to say that you really dug Gravity is like a hot take and kind of controversial, which I don't really know why. That film is directed beautifully. I mean, it has some of the most immaculate direction that I've ever seen in my life. It's mostly aimed towards being a great suspense survival type of film, and it more than exceeds at that. So, anyway, love Alfonso Cuarón, love all of his films, and even his Harry Potter movie, The Prisoner of Azkaban, fucking is a banger. To me, that's the best Harry Potter film in the entire franchise. But yeah, Alfonso Cuarón, brilliant filmmaker. That's why he's number 8 on my list. So at number 7, we have Lars von Trier. Again, kind of a lot like Alejandro Hodorowski. Somebody that just, in terms of his artistry, doesn't really care about the reception of the stuff that he makes. He truly is somebody that I believe just makes movies for himself and, everyone else is invited. And I'm actually paraphrasing Tarantino. He said once in an interview, someone was asking him about like his approach to filmmaking, and Tarantino was like, I make movies for myself. Everyone else is just invited. And I really do respect that from an artist. I mean, I don't think that's the way I'm approaching films as a whole generally. Maybe one day when I'm already rolling in the Benjamins, I can decide, to make a few for me, like completely for me and not give a shit. But I do think art in its purest form is about making something that feels like is resonating with you. And hopefully if it resonates with other people, then that's also great. And I feel like filmmakers like von Trier and Alejandro Hodorowski and a bunch of other great artists, embody that type of philosophy. And von Trier is somebody that makes films that are unforgivingly dark and bleak and somber. And it's just enriched with so much substance and so much intrigue and so much style. Antichrist is my favorite von Trier film. It was hard to pick between Antichrist or Dogville, but both of those films are films that you must seek out as soon as you can. Obviously, when you feel like you're ready for it, because the content is heavy as hell and incredibly graphic, so you have to prepare yourself for that. But what I love about von Trier is that, yeah, he's graphic as all hell, but I feel like there's always some sort of meaningful intention behind it. I mean, I feel like in one way he does just want to shock the audience, but in another way, I do feel like it does have something to contribute to the character and to its themes and, to its story. But yeah, Lars von Trier is a Danish nut job, and I love him every bit for that. And that's why he is number 7 on my list. All right, so at number 6, we have Gaspar Noé. This is another filmmaker, a lot like Lars von Trier and Alejandro Hodorowski, that is just super unforgiving with his approach to filmmaking. Arguably the most unforgiving in comparison to Lars von Trier and Alejandro Hodorowski, but that's incredibly subjective because all three of these filmmakers are daring and bold as hell and just have an unforgiving graphic nature to their films. Gaspar Noé, one thing that I love about his films, yes, they're, as I mentioned, just ambitious and audacious, but Gaspar Noé has this very, I don't want to say flashy, but very intricate and entertaining visual style to his films. Just taking Irreversible as an example, the first 20 minutes of that movie is some of the most insane camera work that I've ever seen out of a film. I mean, it is moving in every direction possible. It takes a good bit to really even grasp what the hell is actually happening. And it's sensory overload in a lot of ways, like pretty much all of his films are, including films like Into the Void and Climax, where it's just unforgiving with his visual style to where it's intentionally kind of disorienting the audience. But for me personally, it's disorienting me in the best way I could possibly ask for. To me, he does have incredible talent as a director. I think that his presentation is some of the best you'll ever see from any filmmaker. I mean, it is so immersive and so compelling and so effective. And for me, Climax is my personal favorite Gaspar Noé film. To me, that's really the only, besides Vortex, the only Gaspar Noé film that you can recommend to first-time Gaspar Noé viewers that really gives them the sense of who he is as a filmmaker without necessarily fully scaring them away from who he is as an artist. It's still a risk. I mean, even with Climax, that could be too much for a lot of people. But, in comparison to stuff like Enter the Void and Irreversible, and even like I Stand Alone, Climax is the one where people can really, get into his style, understand who he is as an artist, and, hopefully be on board to view the rest of his filmography. But yeah, Gaspar Noé doesn't give a shit about you. He don't give a shit about me. And hell, he don't even give a shit about himself and his dignity. He is one hell of an artist, and that is why he is number 6 on my list. So at number 5, we have Michael Haneke. So it's funny because Michael Haneke, sometimes when you look him up as a filmmaker, he'll get kind of roped in with filmmakers like I just listed, Gaspar Noé and Lars von Trier. But he's known as somebody that, makes effed up movies, but he's a lot more subtle about it. He also has such a minimal approach to his filmmaking style. I mean, he'll obviously approach, effed up content, but he'll approach this content in a way that, isn't, overtly graphic most of the time. He usually really loves to take his time and, build that suspense and, build the context of the story and the characters. And then eventually it just kind of comes at you with all he's got. And even when it really hits the climax of the film, he still approaches it in this oddly minimal way that somehow has a more powerful effect than a filmmaker that goes about it in a more overt and maximal way. Caché is a perfect example of that. Caché is my favorite Michael Haneke film. We're actually going to be talking about that in the Discord this Wednesday because I won the wheel pick and it's my pick and I'm picking Caché. But Caché is the perfect example that embodies why Michael Haneke is such a brilliant filmmaker. Because, yeah, he definitely wants to shock you. He wants to disturb you, but he wants it to feel earned and respectable. And I just think he does such a brilliant and compelling job at delivering just that. And I actually have a scene analysis on Caché on the most devastating scene in the entire film. So I only recommend watching it if you've seen Caché, obviously. But there's that if you want to check that out. There's just something powerful and special about the way Michael Haneke goes about, revealing and delivering these, really graphic and intense moments in his films. But yeah, Michael Haneke, brilliant Austrian filmmaker, and that is why he is number 5 on my list. He said that he loved me too, and then he kissed me. So at number 5, we have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Martin fucking Scorsese. What? I almost feel dumb just talking about Martin Scorsese because we all just know how brilliant and ingenious this guy is as an artist and just as a filmmaker in general. This guy has not only just influentially impacted the world of cinema in so many different ways. I don't know if influentially is even a word, but I'm going to use it. But not only has he done that, but his films just stand alone as timeless and entertaining pieces of filmmaking. I just kind of went on a slew of mentioning filmmakers that, not everybody can get into, like Michael Haneke, Gaspar Noé, Lars von Trier. But Martin Scorsese is a filmmaker that anybody with any sense in their brain will come to love. At least a good handful of his films. One thing that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way of some people that haven't watched enough Martin Scorsese films, they'll kind of just label him as, that guy that's great at making mobster movies. Dude, the guy has actually made more non-mobster movies than he has mobster movies. Actually I don't want to say his non-mobster movies are my favorite because Goodfellas is my number 1 favorite Martin Scorsese movie. I know it's cliche, but I just can't help it. That movie is perfection all the way through. But films like Silence, that was my number 1 favorite Martin Scorsese for a while because that film stuck with me so much. And it's in my opinion, his most underrated and overlooked work. That film is the best religious movie that I've ever seen in my entire life. A film based on religion and just a film where someone is battling their conviction of faith. To me, the best movie that has ever demonstrated that. And it is to me, that film's a masterpiece. It's really, really good. If you've been sleeping on that film, please seek it out. It is such a compelling piece of filmmaking. But king of comedy, Raging Bull, which is definitely in my top 5 Scorsese. That film is such an amazing film. Not beyond the amazing performances in that film. One of the most artful, sports movies that I've ever seen. Because most sports movies and also most biopics are just kind of have this run-of-the-mill style to it, but not Raging Bull. That movie is dripping with style. Just absolutely relentless with how it's portraying its characters. And, how it portrays content in general, especially domestic abuse. The Last Temptation of Christ is also just another incredibly bold religious type film that, I haven't seen it in a very long time, but what I remember from it, I just thought, damn, this movie, isn't out to really please people that belong to the faith. And it's not really out to please people that are against the faith either. This is just something that is coming truly from an artist, and that's something that I really respected out of that film so much. But yeah, I don't want to go on and on about Martin Scorsese. We all know that this guy is a true legend, and I know that it's kind of a cliche pick to include him in my top 10 favorite filmmakers, but what am I supposed to do? I fell in love with this guy. he was, again, like one of the most earlier, filmmakers in my film discovery phase that I just obviously cling to and just really got so much out of his films. So, yeah, love that guy to death. Cannot wait for Killers on the Flower Moon. I don't know when we're going to get the trailer. Hopefully it comes sooner than later, but, yeah, either way, Martin Scorsese, that guy is the absolute man, the absolute legend, and that is why he is number 4 on my list. So at number 3, we have Paul Thomas Anderson. So I'm not sure how many of y'all out there will have Paul Thomas Anderson in their top 10, but all I know is that this dude is insanely talented. I mean, he made Boogie Nights when he was in his early 20s, which is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, I have no idea how someone at that... I'm 28, and I can't even fathom making a film like Boogie Nights at my age right now. And what's interesting about Paul Thomas Anderson is that I just got done talking about Martin Scorsese, but earlier in Paul Thomas Anderson's career, you can kind of tell that he took a lot of inspiration from Martin Scorsese's styles in terms of pace and his style of editing and everything. But, as he evolved as a filmmaker, he started finally kind of finding his own unique style. And to me, Punch Drunk Love was that film where he finally found his own distinct style. And from there on out, he just completely separated himself from any other filmmaker and just established himself as, his own person that has his own vision to bring to the table. And I mean, everything that he's made after that, after Punch Drunk Love, is really great filmmaking, except for Inherent Vice. I'm not the biggest fan of Inherent Vice. Hopefully I don't get disliked just for saying that. I do have a whole review on Inherent Vice if you want to hear why I wasn't huge on it. But besides Inherent Vice, everything he's made was an absolute banger. I mean, Phantom Thread to me is a masterpiece. Punch Drunk Love to me is a masterpiece. And There Will Be Blood, to me, in my personal opinion, my personal humble opinion, deserves to be at the very least, in the objective top 20 best films ever made. And I say that with so much confidence. There Will Be Blood is just an absolute achievement and landmark in the history of filmmaking. That film, that's like one of the only films I can really just describe as flawless from the second that it starts till the second that it ends. I also have a scene analysis on There Will Be Blood, so please check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, There Will Be Blood is extraordinary. They came from an extraordinary filmmaker. Paul Thomas Anderson, one of the most talented artists in the film industry that we've ever had. Again, more of a contemporary pick, I guess, but I've just seen all of his films and I absolutely love them. And another amazing thing about him is that he loves Adam Sandler, unashamedly. So I relate so much to him when it comes to that as well. But yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson, extraordinary filmmaker, and that is why he is number 3 on my list. So number 2, we have Denis Villeneuve. Again, kind of another contemporary pick, so I'm sorry if that, offends anybody or makes me look uncultured. But I'm sorry, this dude is insane. I mean, every film that he's made that I've seen is at the very least great. Even Polytechnique, I know not everybody's huge on that film, but I think that's a great movie. Everything that I've seen from him is at the very least an 8 out of 10. And he's made at least 2 or 3 10 out of 10s. And he's just made so many movies in the span of time that he has. I mean, he's a hardworking man, and none of the quality ever seems like he is making so many movies. Like, you would think that the quality of his films would be because he's taking like long, extensive breaks between them. But he's not. He's just like churning out like amazing pieces of art. We got Enemy, we got Prisoners, we got Sicario, we got Blade Runner 2049, we got Dune, we got Arrival, I know this is hot take, but Arrival is actually my personal favorite Denis Villeneuve film. I know that some people consider it to be his weakest, but I'm sorry, like, Arrival, I just feel like, and this kind of goes for his style of filmmaking in general, which is one of the biggest reasons why I love him so much. But Arrival, and amongst all of his films, just really have this subtle, dialed back style to them, but in a way that is not only extremely artful and in ways interpretable, but also is just somehow able to resonate with the mainstream. I mean, I watched Arrival with some of my best friends, Steven and Taylor, and they're people that don't even watch movies often. Like, they would not be embarrassed for me to call them casual moviegoers. And they fell in love with that movie. They fucking love Arrival. And they understood it through and through. And it's just amazing how Denis Villeneuve is able to kind of develop and, execute this kind of style that is resonant not towards only film lovers, but towards, just the mainstream audience that just wants to go out and enjoy a movie. And to me, he does this without compromising any of his style, which is something that's extremely difficult to do. A lot of the times, filmmakers kind of have to, take their style and water it down just to make sure that, it can sell tickets at the box office. But I don't feel like Villeneuve did that. I feel like he is just always bringing his style to the table, and he's always able to elevate the material given to him. And to me, it's just absolutely extraordinary and mind-blowing that he's able to bring such a subtle, unique style of filmmaking to the table that just resonates with pretty much everybody. But anyway, yeah, Denis Villeneuve, master of his craft. I feel like in time, he is definitely going to be considered one of the greatest filmmakers to ever live. And that is why he is number 2 on my list. Alright guys, it's time to unveil my number 1 favorite filmmaker of all time. And for those that follow this channel, it's very easy for y'all to predict who this filmmaker is. And this filmmaker is Stanley fucking Kubrick. A lot like Martin Scorsese, I just feel kind of dumb going on and on about somebody as legendary as Stanley Kubrick. And I know that it comes off as kind of like Martin Scorsese, a predictable and cliche pick. But I'm sorry, I owe Stanley Kubrick pretty much the way that my life has headed. Just me discovering Stanley Kubrick's films paved the way to who I am now. I mean, he's the guy that got me to realize that filmmaking as an art form is not only more special than I had originally perceived, but it's something that I actually want to pursue in my life. It wasn't until I was a teenager when I was 16 when I watched A Clockwork Orange for the first time and realized, wow, there is something truly, truly special about not only Stanley Kubrick's style and his vision that he's bringing to the table, but just to the art of filmmaking in general that I was absolutely hypnotized by. A Clockwork Orange was definitely that film that made me not only view cinema in a different way, but made me view myself and what I wanted to do with my life in a different way. And a lot like Denis Villeneuve, I feel like Stanley Kubrick was able to just bring so much of his own creative artistry to his films in a way that resonated with, people like us who just really love filmmaking on a deeper level, but also could get just people who want to go and enjoy a movie in that same kind of way as well. I mean, not always. I would actually argue that Stanley Kubrick is bolder than Denis Villeneuve just because of films like, as I mentioned, A Clockwork Orange. I don't think Denis Villeneuve is ever going to make anything that daring and graphic as that film. And even just like the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey. I mean, it's not graphic or anything, but it's one of the most abstract pieces of filmmaking to a mainstream film and big budget Hollywood film that I've ever seen. And Stanley Kubrick wasn't really the most frequent filmmaker either. He doesn't have the most films in his filmography, and he took a lot of time in between films in comparison to other filmmakers. But to me, the quality really showed, and it's just crazy that in between Dr. Strangelove all the way up to Barry Lyndon, he just made a string of masterpieces, because Dr. Strangelove, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Clockwork Orange, and Barry Lyndon are all masterpieces in my opinion, and you rarely see that out of a filmmaker. Anyway, yeah, I mean, Stanley Kubrick, an absolute genius, an absolute artist, in every way possible. I just think that he brought so much influence in the history of cinema, so much innovation and artistry to film as an art form. And he's a huge inspiration to me. And as I mentioned, he is pretty much the reason why I decided to go into filmmaking as a career. And even in the future, if I, God forbid, fail at it, I won't regret a single second of it, because Stanley Kubrick and his filmography has shown me that regardless, there is so much power and a unique special element to the art form of filmmaking that I just am so grateful that I was able to experience. So that's it, guys. That is my list of my top 10 favorite filmmakers of all time. It was quite a doozy, but I had a lot of fun doing it. Please don't forget to share your top 10 favorite filmmakers in the comment section. I cannot wait to hear what everybody has to say. And also feel free to consider joining the Discord for $5 a month on Patreon. Again, we have blind film discussions every week. We have wheel pick discussions every other week. We have movie nights every week. And it's just a blast if you want to be surrounded by, other film lovers like yourself. I think it is a great place to be. But anyways, if you really enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.